De Bad Bunny, ¿cuál te gusta? Por la mañana café, por la tarde ron. Kalina está llorando porque no quiere que yo tenga mejores ideas que ella. As you can see, I have 2 of my children on me, so this might not go as planned, but I had a really awesome conversation with Julissa. I just loved everything she stands for and all of the content she offers. I hope you guys enjoyed this conversation I had with Julissa Arce, who is a best-selling author, sought-after speaker, producer, and public thinker whose writing interrogates the myths of the American dream and the cost of assimilation. Her acclaimed books, including My Underground American Dream, Someone Like Me, and You Sound Like a White Girl, blend memoir, social critique, and cultural analysis to reframe conversations around immigration, identity, and what it means to truly belong. Her work has made her a leading voice in the national dialogue on race, belonging, and the power of reclaiming one's roots. She's a trusted voice on CNN, MSNBC, NPR, and other outlets. Her essays have appeared in the New York Times, Time Magazine, CNBC, Vogue, and BuzzFeed News. Julissa's storytelling and advocacy have earned her recognition as one of People en Español's 25 most powerful women of 2017 and 2022, and she was honored as the 2019 Woman of the Year by the city of Los Angeles. Prior to becoming a writer, she built a successful career on Wall Street, working for Goldman Sachs and Merrill Lynch, and had seemingly achieved the American dream. Yet she was not part of what defined American. Julissa immigrated to America from Mexico at the age of 11 and was undocumented for more than a decade. Some of them spent rising to prominence on Wall Street. In order to help other young people in similar circumstances, Julissa co-founded the Ascend Educational Fund. AEF is a college scholarship and mentorship program for immigrant students, regardless of their ethnicity, national origin, or immigration status. She lives in Los Angeles with her husband, daughter, and cat. I hope you enjoyed the episode with Julissa as much as I did.
No.
Duro. Hello, everyone. And hi, Julissa. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I'm so excited about our conversation. And one of our new traditions is to start off asking a question for all of our parents who are guests. So what is an unapparent truth of parenting for you?
Thank you for having me on the show. When I was thinking about this question, the first thing that popped into my mind was just how much the dynamics in my marriage have changed as a result of becoming a parent. That was very unapparent to me. I did not realize just how much my husband and I were going to have to figure out how to be husband and wife when we became parents. We had not thought about that at all. I think we were so focused on the parenting part of it that we did not at all consider how much the dynamics were going to change between us.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I'd always heard from my parents how important it was to make sure that our unit as a couple was really, strong and understanding and on the same page, because it was really difficult once you have kids to maintain sort of relationally that just being on the same page and the dynamic and all of that. And you can hear it 1,000 times, but until you experience it and live it, it's really, same with parenthood, right? You hear this and that and how hard, but you don't really know in all of the ways that it's particularly challenging for you specifically, right? Until you experience it. So that's a really good one. Yeah. Thank you for that. I'd like to get into our conversation by starting with your story, not just as someone who's a powerful writer, right? And you've written powerfully about the American dream, but as someone who has had to unlearn it in real time, right? And now raising a daughter and finding a new definition of belonging. You can start by, telling us your story as you want to, tell it. And also, what moments in your life shaped your relationship to your identity and belonging most profoundly?
Yeah. So I'll give you the short version because I've written, 3 books in which I share parts of my story. I think like the basics of it is that, I was born in Mexico in this beautiful town called Tasco Guerrero. And I came to the US when I was 11 years old. And then when I was 14, the tourist visa that I used to come to the United States expired. And that's when I became undocumented. And, 14 years old, that's like a very formative time in a person's life, right? You're a teenager, you're dealing with so many things already. And for me, it was dealing with those teenage issues plus sort of having to face this new reality of I'm undocumented, I don't have papers to be here. And really my mom telling me that it was sort of like this big secret that I couldn't tell anyone because it was information that could be used against me, which is why, by the way, I'm always so impressed is not the right word, but so inspired by young people now who are like, I am undocumented and I'm unafraid, because I was like very much afraid. And I do think that moment is one of those critical moments that shaped my identity as a Mexican American, as a child. And that's where sort of my struggle with like, where do I belong kind of started. Because before that, I hadn't really had to think about it, right? Like I grew up in Mexico where like everyone's Mexican. And so, I never had to think about identity. And then I moved to San Antonio where like there's a lot of Mexicans and Tejanos, which, those identities on their own are sort of complicated. And there's lots of books that have been written of people who sort of try to discern the difference between, a Tejano and a Mexican American, all of the nuances in those different identities. But for me, that moment being 14, becoming undocumented, really brought into question, like, where do I belong? Because I had done the things that were asked of me, right? Like learn how to speak English. I was doing really well in school. I was a cheerleader. So I sort of felt like all American. And then all of a sudden, I don't have papers anymore. And now there's a lot of people that think I shouldn't be here anymore. So that's where it sort of started. Eventually I went to the University of Texas at Austin, got my papers, went to work on Wall Street, became a vice president at Goldman Sachs, and then left that world to become a writer. So that's sort of like the short version of the story, and at least a couple of key moments that really shaped my view of identity in the United States.
Yeah. Wow. I actually went to college in San Antonio. So I got a firsthand, look at life there. And I met, so many wonderful Tejanos. And as you say, that like that interesting difference between I met Mexicans who grew up in Mexico, and I met Mexican Americans who grew up in Texas. So what you say, I guess not everyone has had that experience, but interestingly enough, I understand what you're referring to. And I wanted to understand maybe how you now as a mom, right? How your experiences have informed perhaps the messaging that you want your daughter to learn or unlearn as the daughter of immigrants.
One of the things that I talk a lot about in my books is just how much of American history I did not learn growing up, right? Like the public school system. I went to private school and then public school, and both, in neither place did I ever learn the story of Mexicans in the United States. And our history is so deep and so entrenched in the overall American history. And learning that history has really helped me to understand just how rooted I am to this country and how much I do actually belong here. And I say that because the messages that I give to my daughter are so different than the messages that I received growing up. And if she never learns the history of Mexicans in school, she's 100% going to learn it from me, and is already learning it from me. And that's why I think it's so important, when we talk about representation, it really matters. And I see how much it matters now with my daughter, because if I just pick up books that I'm reading to her, right? And it's like, I don't know, The Little Mermaid or Cinderella or whatever princess, right? Snow White. And like so many of those princesses do not look like her, right? They don't look like her. They're blonde. And my daughter is a beautiful brown baby. And so I've really gone out of my way to find books that, it is Cinderella. It's a story of Cinderella, but she's brown. And it's a story of Little Mermaid, but she's brown. She looks like us. And so my daughter can start thinking of herself as a princess if that's how she wants to think about herself, right? Because she sees princesses that look like her. And I know that might seem very trivial, but it's not, because, and I'm not the first person to say this, but you cannot become what you cannot see, right? And so if you don't see doctors and authors and teachers that look like you, it becomes harder for you to imagine that future for yourself. And so, I'm making sure that my daughter knows that brown is beautiful, that she is beautiful, that she belongs in this country, that this is her country, regardless of, where her parents come from, but also to know that like she's also Mexican, So like she will, like, I've definitely taught her like Viva Mexico, and so she'll randomly be like Viva Mexico, which I love that she does that. So I just really want her to be grounded in these two identities and understand that they're not separate from one another.
Yes, that's beautiful. And representation does matter. I do see that even with, kids who you think aren't picking up on things, but they are. They pick up on so much that you don't realize as adults, right? So definitely having, in books and movies and shows, that representation is so important for kids to be able to see themselves, right? And as you say, imagine their future as something more tangible than just, I don't know, thinking that it's unattainable, right?
Yeah.
But how old is your daughter? Sorry.
She's 2.
She's 2. Okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you, but for me, I now have 3 under 5. It's a lot.
That's incredible.
But at least, yeah. Thanks.
Girl, are you okay?
I am, because I have a village. And I am privileged to have a village away from my family, because my family is mostly in Puerto Rico. And it's hard to raise children away from your own parents and family, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I've come to realize that it's really nowadays where it's more common to raise a family away from your own family. And that adds so many layers of just difficulty to life as parents. And I'm definitely blessed and privileged to be able to have created sort of my village away from my family, because it's hard.
It's
Mental health,
it's really hard.
can really suffer without your village, But so I want to talk about, in your books, right? You challenge this idea that proximity to whiteness and power equals success, right? You've said that the American dream comes at a cost. And I want to unpack that with you, especially in the context of parenting, right? What are the myths you most want to debunk for the next generation of children, especially brown and immigrant children?
The message in my last book, which I think is what you're referring to, the book is called You Sound Like a White Girl. And it's funny the reactions I get from it, but that's like literally something somebody told me once. This boy I had a crush on told me that I sounded like a white girl when I was in high school. And what I'm trying to do with the book is to dispel this myth that you have to change who you are, that you have to give up your culture, that you have to give up your language in order to belong and in order to find success. And you mentioned you're Puerto Rican. And I think that, Bad Bunny is a perfect example of this, right? He has become the biggest global superstar in the world without having to give up his language, his culture, his love for his island and his people. And that is literally the message that I'm trying to impart on my daughter and the next generation of brown, Black kids, immigrant kids, because that to me has been the most freeing revelation in the world, that I can find success, that I can belong just how I am. Right? I don't have to change things about myself. And that that's it. That's the message. The message is hold on to your culture, hold on to your roots. And the more rooted that you are, the more grounded that you are, the more successful that you can become. And your own community And even those outside of your community, when you're authentic, when you are doing things from the heart, people will come. People from within your community and people from outside your community, they will gravitate towards that because you're being truthful to yourself and you're not trying to be something you're not.
Mm-hmm. The right people will come, right? Because that's what we want. We don't want to surround ourselves with, fake yes people or whatever. We, when, as you say, when we are authentic, that will, attract the right people in our lives who are meant to be in our lives. And I think that is such a powerful message, and what I myself try to emulate to my children, right? The best way you can teach is by being an example to them. And motherhood comes with so much imposter syndrome and so much, am I doing it right? Am I teaching them the right lessons? And obviously we both are in the beginning stages of this journey where we have little kids. And I don't think we'll be able to fully see the fruits of our labor of love until they're a little older, right? But what you said about Bad Bunny, it's what I think I admire the most about his success is that he has not come back to his roots. He never left his roots. It's always been about Puerto Rico, right? It's always been about where he comes from. And I know a lot of people maybe aren't fans of his music or of whatever it is. I am, but I also am a fan of his position and using it to, empower all minorities, really. But, me being from Puerto Rico, I know I'm a little biased, but I know you see it too, even as a Mexicana. And it's the fact that he hasn't had to belittle himself and sell out in mainstream media to then become like, oh, this is the real me, No, it's always been, and I loved obviously the last album about how he brings about, yes, their, colonialism and just all of the history of Puerto Rico. And it just reflects, I know, on where we're at, I think, in history right now. It is a unique period in our political climate, in our just the era we're living, that resounds so much more profoundly, I think, for a lot of us. And so I feel very proud of this last album and tour that he's about to go on. That ties into our conversation, right? Because even though people don't see it as one and the same, it is. It's the messaging we're putting out to future generations and the empowerment that you can feel from knowing you can be yourself and be successful, right?
And find global success. Because I think for a long time, people felt, especially artists, felt like the crossover was about like singing in English, right? And like Bad Bunny has shown us that you don't have to do that. Like there's a lot of people from around the world. Like, I mean, I was like a huge like Coldplay fan before I even spoke English. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
But because there's something about connecting to the music that doesn't need translation. And yeah, I mean, to me, that is the message that is an important message for me as a mom to like impart on my daughter. And by the way, for her to see her mom also having fun, like I went to Bad Bunny's concert 3 times. I went Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the weekend I was there. And I had the most amazing time. And thankfully, I have a partner who like supported that and encouraged it and stayed home to like be with our daughter so that mom could go enjoy 3 nights of
that is
the residency
awesome.
in Puerto Rico.
I love that for you. I also went. I took my children because, I thankfully was able to get a suite, which, I know is not everybody's able to do that. But I was very clear that I didn't want to just like leave my kids behind if I could find a space that was, safe and controlled and, they had their headphones. But I brought my parents with me and I love seeing all of the different generations. My parents were there, my kids were there, I was there, and it was like a family experience. And, my parents don't listen to his music, but they loved how culturally and historically rich the whole theme and messaging was.
Yeah.
And so I want to talk to you about how you, well, I mean, I know your daughter's only 2, but how do you envision your conversations surrounding immigration, privilege, race, power? How do you frame that with children, because I feel like there's this belief that, oh, kids aren't, like they shouldn't be talked to about these things. And I feel the opposite. Obviously, there needs to be age appropriate ways where we can find that messaging to land and get across. But there are conversations that need to be had. And I know language is important, the way we talk about people and culture. But I just want to hear your thoughts about that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think that these conversations are incredibly important. And I don't think it's ever too early to start. I think it's, as you said, sort of finding those right words, right, to talk to your kids about it. I mean, my daughter knows, like, I was born in Mexico, right? And I came here, and she knows that we have family in Mexico, and we've gone to Mexico, and she knows, like, my mom lives in Mexico, so she'll be like, "Abuelita vive en Mexico," like, she knows what it's like she knows that. And there's a book we have that's called, like, Anti-Racist Baby, and it's a board book, and it talks about race, and it shows sort of different really beautiful, like, images that kind of show what does it mean, like, what does race mean, and the fact that, like, we are all different, and not talking about being different doesn't mean that injustice goes away. You know what I mean? Like, I think some people want to say, well, as long as we don't talk about it, like, everything's okay. And it's like, no, whether or not you want to name it, there is still differences in how the world views us and how the systems are not made for us always, right? And so we have to challenge those systems. And I'll give you a really quick anecdote. I have a book that goes through, like, different, like, Latino people in history, right? And one of them is Dolores Huerta. And so I showed my daughter Dolores Huerta, and I was like, ella inventó el chant de sí se puede. And then we went to the LAFC game recently, the Los Angeles Football Club, the soccer team here in LA, and Dolores Huerta was there. And they said Dolores Huerta, and she was like, sí se puede. Like, she knows that. And she knows, like, Dolores Huerta said sí se puede. And so she might not understand all of it, right? She's 2. But the fact that, like, we're starting to have those conversations with her will only mean that as she grows up, we can continue to have those conversations, and she will have a foundation from which we're having those conversations that started when she was very young, right? Like, I want her to know that there are people who look different, who have different backgrounds. And I want her to know that regardless of where we were born, regardless of the color of our skin, we all deserve the same opportunities. And sometimes, in order for us to have the same opportunities, means that, there's got to be programs and there's got to be fixes to the system, because we don't all start from the same place.
Hey, just popping in to say thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts would mean the world. It helps us so much, and as a bonus, you'll also get a chance to win some exclusive merch like this sweatshirt I'm wearing. Now, back to the episode. I mean, being advocates in, like, the public eye and raising kids can feel a little bit complex, in that I at least feel that motherhood has enhanced that fire that I always had within. It just, like, quadrupled. And so, I'm just acutely aware of not just the example I want to set for my children, but the tangible and intangible ways that I want to make this world worthy of my children, right? And so for those people who don't understand my advocacy, right, and they're like, oh, why do you speak up? Like, why? It's easier to just stay silent and in your little bubble of privilege, right? I find that so ironic, because it's like, you are obviously speaking from a point of privileged that you don't have to maybe think about these things. And sure, a lot of the topics I advocate for maybe don't directly, impact my specific life because, none of the financial things that bog me down, that bog other people down, right? It's not something I have to necessarily think about. And also, I don't think about things just for me, right? I think about things for the future generations, for my children, my children's children, your child, our neighbors' children. And it's so much about the collective. And that's what's, I think, lacking, the community, the feeling of like, we are in this together, and it is our job as a society to impart in the next generations to come that kindness and empathy and love for, just people and children. And I'm also sometimes I question, am I in any way hurting my family by being this outspoken, right? Does any of this something you think about or resonates with you, or how do you go about, I don't know, your public advocacy and all of that while raising, a small child?
Well, I've been a public thinker for a decade now. I wrote these books before I met my husband, or at least my first book. I've been an advocate and an activist for longer than I've been a mother, and have advocated for children before I was ever a mother, before I even thought I wanted to have children. For a lot of the same reasons that you just mentioned, right? That it's not just about what impacts me directly, but what impacts our world. And so, I've made certain choices about, I don't share my daughter's name publicly. A lot of people think that her name is actually Rayita, because that's what I call her when I refer to her. But unless you're actually like in my real life, like you don't know my daughter's name, I don't show her face at all on Instagram, on any pictures, because I want to protect her and I want to protect her privacy, and because the internet is scary. And I'm really grateful that like from time to time when I've made a mistake and like have posted a picture of her face, when I meant to post it on like my close friends, like somebody will write me and be like, your daughter's face. And I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for telling me, because I think people know, like people who follow me know that like I don't show my daughter's face. And if I am showing it, it's a mistake. And please let me know. And so I've done things like that to like really protect her. And at the same time, I feel very strongly that unless I am fighting for a better world, then I am not being the best mother that I can be, because otherwise, like, what kind of world am I leaving behind for her and for her kids if she chooses to have them? So these things to me, they're not in conflict, like becoming a parent is not in conflict with my activism and my advocacy. On the contrary, it has fueled it. It has made me feel so much more responsible for the world around me, because it is the world that my daughter is growing up in. So yeah, they're not in conflict to me. If anything, I'm so much fired up,
Same.
Yeah.
I feel that, yes, on a spiritual level. Speaking of being fired up, what are some of the issues that you feel most urgently about today?
The world is really big and there's a lot of problems in the world, right? And so there's like a lot that I'm really passionate about. Obviously what's happening in the United States with like immigration and the complete erosion of due process is very alarming, and I think should be really alarming to you, regardless of whether or not you're an immigrant, you have people in your life who are immigrants, because it really, how we treat immigrants is a direct reflection of the state of the United States. And what I mean by that is, whether or not, whatever your views are on immigration, if you believe in the United States, it means you believe in due process. It means you believe in those basic rights that are enshrined in the Constitution, and due process is one of them, right? So there should be a process by which someone is removed from the country, and that has completely gone away. And so, so immigration is a huge issue, not just because it's personal, because I am an immigrant, but because I care about democracy and I care about our country. And so that's something that's really big on my mind. Then again, I think the other issue that is constantly on my mind right now, which I know can be very controversial, but it is sort of what's happening in Gaza. And I sort of subscribe to Ms. Rachel's viewpoint on this, which is, that regardless of what your political views are, your religious views, that children deserve better. That's what's happening there.
Yes, all of this, immigration, it's one of those things that I also get comments about, like, oh, like, why do you care? Like, you house them then, blah, blah, blah. And to me, those are just such like dehumanizing comments. And I don't have to be an immigrant, as you said, to care about what's happening. Not just because I care about other people, but as you say, I care about this country and what this country, supposedly was founded upon. And the due process is such a basic part of what the minimum of rights that people should have, right? And so 100% immigration is one of those topics that I at least post about a lot on my social media, and just what's happening nowadays is just it's really sad. Not just that it's happening,
and we're not helpless about it. I think that we can, because there is so much stuff coming our way every single day, it can feel very overwhelming. But there are things that we can do, and there are actions that we can take, and organizations we can support, that at least help me feel less helpless. I don't have control over everything, but I do have control over some things. And so what can I do to help and to feel like, I'm not just giving up?
And could you share some of those resources or ways that you help? We'll plug in after the show for people, listening who are interested. But I just, want that conversation to be, heard also, if you don't mind sharing some ways that you find help.
Yeah. So, there are organizations, like This Is About Humanity, the Immigrant Legal Defense Fund. I have a scholarship fund for immigrant students, regardless of their immigration status. It's a college scholarship fund. And right now we're raising money for students in Texas because the state of Texas got rid of in-state tuition for undocumented students there, which means college has now become like 4 times more expensive for them, which means that there's a lot of college students that won't be able to finish unless they're able to find financial support elsewhere. So those are like a few of the organizations. My scholarship fund is called the Ascent Educational Fund. So those are some of the organizations that I'm involved with, that I support, that other people can support as well.
Thank you. Thanks for that information. And on that note, I guess before we part, I'd like to hear some of the hopeful things that, to end this conversation on a kind of happier note. What is, or what are things that nowadays, despite all of the, ugly things happening, still give you hope and bring you hope in the future of this country?
I know you like, and it's always funny to me, like, it's like, oh, wow, what happy things can I say? What gives me hope? But I think like a lot of the way that young people are showing up for each other really gives me hope. The way that community is showing up for each other really gives me hope. All the people that are like out there protesting give me hope, because it means that even in spite of whatever fear you might feel, you're still showing up. You have that fear, but you're not letting that fear stop you. That gives me a lot of hope. And just in terms of things that make me happy, I mentioned Bad Bunny, and like Bad Bunny's music really makes me happy.
Yes, same.
Like anytime I'm feeling blue, I'm just like, okay, like what Bunny song can I listen to?
Yeah. Honestly, all his this album, I just listened to it on repeat. It just feels like home, and as you say, it feels really hopeful that this album, even though it's entirely in Spanish, people from all over the world are listening to it. That's pretty incredible.
All over the world.
Yeah.
I'm going to Japan in March to see him.
Wow. I might have to join you for that one.
Yeah.
So I'd love to give you the space to, just share with us if you have any future current projects or releases or initiatives that you're working on.
Yeah. So the names of my books are called My Underground American Dream, Someone Like Me, and You Sound Like a White Girl. Those are my 3 books that people can get literally anywhere that books are sold. And I am working on a new book. I haven't announced it yet, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But I am working on a new book. And people can follow me on Instagram at Julissa Arce. I try to create a lot of content that is like very informative and hopeful and empowering. So people can find me there.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Julissa.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to the Unaparent Podcast, produced by Studio Dama and hosted by me, Katia Lindor. If you like what you heard, subscribe or follow us on social media and tune in as we share deeply human stories about the unapparent truths of parenting.